Hey, Michael, can you hear me? Check. Hello. Hello. Wow, what a mess.
Hey, Mr. Lee, can you hear me?
Check, check, check. Check.
Hello, are you on the roof? Can you hear me? Can you talk? No?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I figured. It's just that Adam was asking about the links. I sent him the link, but if he didn't know where it was, then other people probably don't either.
What are you doing, Michael, in TV land? Aha! Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you
Gosh.
now, but we
Hello?
cannot see you.
Anyone?
We can only see a part of your shirt.
Check, check.
It's a little disconcerting. I can hear you. Hello. Hi, Adam. I don't think he can hear us.
I can hear you. Can you hear me
Yeah.
now?
There's
Okay.
Adam, but I don't hear Adam.
Who's that? Is that Lee?
Can
Yeah, that's Lee.
Headphones? Do I need to put headphones in?
No, I wasn't saying that. I was saying he should listen because we're talking to him, but he can't hear us. But we can hear him, but he's not looking at the screen, so I don't know.
yes? Can you hear me or no?
Yes, yes,
Yes, you can hear me.
we
I can't
can.
hear you. I don't know why.
Yeah.
All right, welcome. Gosh, it sucks when I can't hear my audience. What's
He
going on with
should
that?
be able to hear us.
Are we gonna see your face or
We can't communicate that to
Well,
him because he can't see us.
let's see.
no?
Send.
Okay, I'm
Yeah, you know, this is my classroom. My internet died at my place, and so I came here. I'm on the street in Taiwan, so you can
Wow.
see. I grabbed my gear. It died like an hour ago, so I grabbed my stuff half an hour ago and booted up the mountain. Okay.
So can you hear us or no?
How to hear you? Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the room and come back in because I
Okay.
changed sound settings on my computer, and that might do it because Zoom is flaky sometimes. I'll be right back.
All right.
So now that he's gone, let's talk about it. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Michael,
Michael.
did you catch
Hey,
the
how is
scorpion?
your shoulder?
Was it you who caught the scorpion?
I did.
Wow, that was a good one. I liked it.
It's not difficult. to
That was
catch scorpions.
honestly a very small one.
You know, the smaller the scorpion, the more venomous is usually the rule.
But it's not difficult to catch a scorpion. It's not like they're fast.
I
Yeah.
don't know. They can move pretty quickly.
It's I wasn't sure what species it was. I didn't recognize it, but I mean I recognized it. I just didn't know the name of it because it looks like it's the same kind of species that's on my necklace.
Mm-hmm.
I have
Those are
a
the best pictures I could take for you,
Yes.
man.
No.
I have
Yes.
an Asian forest
Yes.
scorpion and an emperor
Why
scorpion.
are you looking up when you're talking to me? It's very strange. I'm over here. Hello? I'm over here.
Are you talking to me?
No, I'm being a
Oh,
dick.
him?
He can't hear me, so I'm just
Lee?
being stupid.
Oh. We've got we're on like his neighborhood kind of looks like a jail block or something.
I think that's how Taiwan looks. He can hear us now, I can tell, because he's
Yeah.
laughing.
Yeah.
But he's probably going to pretend he can't hear us for a few more minutes, so we can say.
Is he
how
wearing a
stupid it is.
skater die shirt? A skater die shirt from Nintendo?
But now we can't hear you, Lee. What changed? You can hear us, but we can't hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay. So,
Yes. No?
yes.
Yes. You can hear me.
Yes, damn it. I thought you could hear us now.
See, the problem is there's no control over this TV. Those assholes didn't give me the remote. So, all right. And is Dawn in here?
No.
I'm
And it's
sorry.
very
Where's
strange
my friend
how
Dawn?
you're looking up over there, but I'm
I
down
know he's
here.
coming.
Yeah, he's like, it's like wearing the camera on a bike seat.
So it's not a jail cell. It's like it's a street in Taipei, Taiwan, Danshui. I'll just going on here.
Like stalker in the road or
going on
something.
there,
Kind of
and
exotic looking.
that's all I can show you so much. Okay. Gosh, what a screw up episode this is turning out to be.
But your guest is not here yet, so you're fine.
Like I got a big problem here, folks. I can't hear you.
No? But you could for a minute.
Trying again.
Testing 1, 2,
This funky
3.
ass Zoom.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Hello? Can you hear us?
We're on the DJ table screen.
And there's a TV without a remote.
We're the record view.
And it's raining.
DJ Lee Wayfinder.
Wayfinder.
Wayfinder. Oh yeah. My bad.
That's got to be like Florida.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can
You
hear
know
you.
we're getting
Yes.
closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk amongst yourselves as you were doing, but I can't hear you for some reason. It's ridiculous Zoom. All right.
Maybe because it's pouring there and maybe the equipment got wet.
No, he said his internet went down in his other house, so he's at the office. Bye.
It's gone again.
Bye. You should probably reboot. But it sucks that he doesn't have the TV control. That would suck. So what else is new with you guys?
I was watching the replay of the appearance I did last night just because.
Because Scott said that thing about you?
Well, no,
How
I
smart
want to
you
make
are.
sure that I conveyed myself good. I don't know, I guess.
Well, you did, though, because there's already rumors going about how you did. So you
Oh,
did.
good.
Because that's
Yeah, I
what
really
Scott was
don't do
ranting
it.
and raving about today.
Usually people have
Just
to
like
tell me
that.
to stop, so.
How what?
There
What?
he is. He's muted.
I didn't hear you, Adam. What did you say?
Oh, I said,
Can't hear you at all. What?
I said, people usually have to tell me to stop because I just keep going on about the research because I spent so many years just like intensified.
That's not right.
So I just, when I talk about it, I can go deep into it.
Hey, Ryan, let me bring you up to date. Lee's having a technical
Hello?
difficulties. We're all playing around each other.
Hello?
We can hear him. He cannot hear us. And it's generally an interesting experience.
Mm.
And he's in the office because his home internet died.
This does sound like an interesting experience.
And it's probably because it's raining.
Holy shit, I can frankly hear you now.
No.
Gosh.
I was just catching up Ryan on the situation.
Gosh.
You don't look
All
like
right.
you can hear us.
We're doing this now. And recording is already happening. So boy, someone will have fun editing that in beginning part out for me.
Okay.
All right, welcome everyone. I will
Welcome.
Why
Lee's
you
head.
keep looking up away from us, but we're looking at your neck?
Welcome,
My
Lee's
on fire,
side
how
of
you
your
doing?
head.
Hello, Lee's next door.
Well, I was gonna talk. Okay, fine. I'll just
All right.
hey. And welcome Adam. Again, how you doing?
The session begins.
It's very strange how you keep looking up like that.
I think there's some internet
Yeah, it's
issue
like, what's
going
he
on.
looking at? Rainwater or something? No, that's all I
Can
keep.
you
There's
hear me
nothing
now?
there, man.
No, we're down here, Lee.
Look up,
Down here.
Adam. Maybe there's something on your ceiling because I don't see nothing there.
We're like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids
You know,
like, on a table.
it's a Wi-Fi connection.
Big giant
in
Lee.
There it
this
is.
building.
That's where you're looking at the ceiling.
Oh my gosh.
There's still
This is
nothing
gonna
there,
work.
Lee.
Well, now
I
we got
keep
something
looking up.
Yeah.
Every time he looks up,
I'm not
everybody
looking at
look
the
up.
ceiling. I'm trying to look at you. I really am. Hi.
There we go. Now we're kind of closer. No, down here. We're here. Yeah, there you go. Woo! Bingo. Oh, no.
'Cause,
No.
you know, like the TV is like up in the sky.
Yeah. Don't look up there. We're down.
I'm trying to.
No more looking up. You can't
Okay.
look up. Okay. There. No. My goodness. Oh, I see. I
There
see
you are.
what.
There you are up in the sky.
Kind of like, because I put my.
So we can like wave at people in Taiwan. Hey!
You totally can. They can see it's on the street.
Oh, man, it's pretty.
Wow. Wow.
Usually,
Yeah, you know, I got a message from Don that said that he was going to be early.
Well, I was just talking to him about 20 minutes ago, so I know he's coming. And I told
Oh,
him I
great.
would meet him here.
Don Julio.
Yeah, Don Clarke. So Adam, you're like co-host because I had to leave the room.
Right? Is that
Adam's
shirt?
like a rock. He can hold that space for you.
Is that shirt say skate or die?
It does.
Really? Like the Nintendo game? Skate and destroy. There you go. You skateboard?
Wow. Yeah.
I used to do that a
Long
lot.
time ago in a country far, far away.
But that band, Suicidal Tendencies, they were really into skateboarding.
Yeah, totally. You know what limitation is? It's ridiculous thing.
So what do we got going on here in this?
Now I can both hear you and got some independence from my microphone arm.
DJs.
All right.
DJs.
Welcome everyone to episode 3 of the Love and Support Sessions. We're coming to you live today from Taipei in Taiwan, literally on the street. And it's been raining. And it was cool, but it's not as cool as I thought it would be. So to my beautiful guests, would you care to introduce yourselves and let the world know where you're tuning in from?
Want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
What do I say again?
Let us introduce yourself and let us know where you're tuning in from.
Oh,
Where you are in the
I'm
world.
Adam. I've been in from season 4, going into season 5, and I'm all the way in Massachusetts. 9:24 p.m. and I'm just hanging out, just first time here and getting ready to see what goes on in this group. And that's about it.
Wow, I turned you up, man. Now I can hear you so much more clearly. Wow. The magic of a mixing board. Booyah! All right.
DJ
I'm so glad you
Skate
made
and
it.
Destroy.
Like, check this out. This is what I'm working with here.
Yeah, I knew it. See, how did I know? I was like, I feel like I'm at a DJ table.
He did say that. I attest to that. He said that. He's like, am I inside the DJ table? Is what he said. He said, I think I'm in a little screen on a DJ board. I think that's what he said. That's what he said. But the second part of that sentence was, but why does Lee keep looking away?
Yeah, I know. Why is he looking at the ceiling? And then, yeah, okay, we're up because we're up there. Like yeah, because
that's right.
My webcam is like right almost on my screen, so I'm kind of sometimes looking over the camera, but in the general direction. But Lee's just like this. He's like,
Well, this is Michael. I'm in Acapulco, and it's 8:34 or 8:26 my time. And I would just like to say peace to the people of Taipei. We come in peace.
That's awesome.
I suppose it's my turn, and my name is Agnieszka, and I'm next door to Michael's in Acapulco, and I come with love. And he froze, so I think it's Ryan's turn.
now Ryan's up.
My name is Ryan, and I just picked my daughter up from ballet. I'm in Fresno, California. So I'm in a truck right now, actually.
Fresno?
Yep.
Oh, that's where the Karate Kid was from, right? In the movie?
I have no idea.
No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I didn't live here then, so it's possible.
Yeah. Ralph Macchio or something his name is. Guy who played on Karate Kid. that's where the movie takes place, right? Anyway,
Yeah, that's the first one. Ralph Macchio.
yeah. You know, it's weird. He's like almost 60, and he looks like, I don't know. He's still young, but it's kind of weird. Like, he's 60. The kid from Karate Kid is 60. Wow, time flies.
And his teacher is like a Japanese guy, Mr. Morita. Yeah. But now, you know, there's an updated version of the Karate Kid. Did you know that?
What is it?
There's an updated version of the Karate Kid.
Yeah, with wasn't it? There was a few of them, right?
Well, the most recent one is Will Smith's son.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, and then the
So his
Cobra
mother
Kai, the Cobra Kai thing. They
is a
did
single
some
mom.
series on YouTube. But anyway, kind of a sidetrack here.
Oh, yeah, right. Cobra, something like that.
Cobra
Yeah.
Kai,
Yeah, Cobra Kai.
the
Yeah.
blonde kid, is like, put him in a body bag. Yeah, Johnny.
Yeah, that's I think a TV series, right? And yeah, so his father's like some kind of soldier dude. His mother gets a job in China. Is that surprising?
Yeah.
And who's his teacher turned out to be in China, you know? Anyone? Can you think of a famous Chinese martial artist? Just one.
You got some.
Jackie Chan.
Exactly. That turns out to be his what do you call those guys? The dude, the supervisor or the super at the
Sinsu?
apartment building in China.
Sensei.
And then that guy becomes his-
Sensei.
Yeah. Yep. In
That,
China, they would call them Sifu or Lao Shi. Anyway, go on. What were you going to say, Adam?
oh, nothing. I don't know. Yeah, that blonde kid and that sensei guy. I know this girl who said she saw them and they were drinking together like a few years ago, like at some bar. I'm like, oh, that's odd. It's pretty funny too.
Who?
You know what we were just talking about?
Who's drinking together?
The Cobra Kai, right? The blonde kid from that movie and the sensei guy who's like, sweep the leg, no mercy. They were at
Yes.
they were at some bar in Las Vegas drinking together.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like they hang out in real life. Yeah, I guess they're really good friends or whatever.
Okay, well, I'm so glad all of you showed up because I got 2 messages from Don. He says, "Hey, I'm ready. I'm early this time." I don't know where he is. And then he sent another message, "Hey, are we still doing the show?" So maybe he was here and he didn't see me because I was getting it to work
Yeah.
over and over. So, hey, I sent a message yes to him. We'll see if he makes it in. But, and Adam, so this is the love and support sessions. We had our last episode was talking about Tantra. Do you know anything about that subject?
What is it?
Tantra.
I don't know if I'm hearing you correctly.
Tantra. Tantra.
Tantra. Oh, okay. I'm not exactly sure what that is. I mean, I've heard about it many times, but I never actually got in my head a definition of what that meant.
250 sexual positions.
Yeah, I thought
Definitely one.
something like that or something. Is that what?
Only 250. Yeah. Well, Don was here and he was giving us some definition of it. And one thing he said was yoga is only a small part of Tantra. And sexuality or sexual information or education is, again, a small part of the whole body of information that is Tantra.
I know somebody from Mauritius Islands who's a Hindu, and I know he's talked about it in some of his work or whatever, but I wasn't really fully up to date with what the entire spectrum of that included.
Right. And so Don was talking to us about how people relate to one another. And then he started to talk about us as the episodes started to wind down about the differences between or some of the things that go on in regards to open or closed relationships. Mike, do you remember anything that we were talking about at the end of our last episode?
Yeah, I actually took some pretty extensive notes, but I thought one of the things is that what I got from Don was there's a great deal more awareness, I think, of things other than what I think Western philosophy really puts forth in regard to kind of human nature and just in general the Western philosophy that Tantra, I think, from his description, gives us a much greater picture of like what is out there, where like on Western philosophy, it always kind of comes back to like like the limitations of human nature. I think Tantra goes in the opposite direction and really kind of goes towards what's the awareness, what's the unlimited side of that, So I think, that's something he mentioned. I don't know if we explored that a great deal, but I think that's certainly something I'm very interested in hearing more about. Let me find my notes here real quickly.
Please do.
I did a lot of studies with the Theosophy, so I know they were really into Eastern thought, or at least partially.
Right on. I saw some looks as people walk by.
Well, one of the other things I wrote down was in kind of going into the Aquarius millennia or era or whatever you want to call that, and kind of the thing we just experienced here the last few days, where Saturn was passed up by Jupiter, and Saturn kind of represents the authoritarian and the kind of the closed-minded, the control and scarcity mindset, versus Jupiter being the kind of open-minded, awareness-orientated, freedom, and that kind of a mindset, combining with Aquarius. I think Tantra kind of represents Jupiter, whereas kind of Western philosophy represents Saturn, and to some degree, I think that's also interesting. And then I think we talked a little bit about the, facing fears. He's talking about fighting the dragon and like the representation of the symbols that, what those actually mean. And I think there's a great deal of kind of some of the stuff that I've read. One of the books that I think is really kind of interesting is something called The Secret of Light by Walter Russell. And he kind of refers to some of the Eastern philosophies in regard to his understanding of, Walter Russell. If you know about him, he's kind of the era of Tesla. He worked with Tesla, he worked with Einstein. He actually discovered like 5 elements, and he did it through something similar to the way that kind of Tesla came about, which was kind of through a spiritual uh, awareness. And so in a lot of ways, Walter Russell kind of combines science and spirituality, which is rather unique in that book, The Secret of Light.
What did he do? I heard you say, and he did what?
Well, he was a scientist, among many other things, but he discovered 5 elements that are on the periodic charts. And he did that through like a spiritual exploration, which was rather interesting. It's one of those things where combining spirituality and science, comes together. And I think it has a really unique perspective.
It's cool. I think the
But it
two
kind of,
coexist, I think mainline science like does all it can to push spirituality so far away from science when the two can coexist, it's
well,
kind
I
of
was always fascinated with Tesla, because a lot of the things that Tesla put together, like the AC motor, for example, he pretty much did it in his head, and he described it as being he like worked on it in his dreams, and then he made it into reality. And I was always fascinated by that. It wasn't until I discovered Walter Russell that I think Walter Russell did a much better job of kind of describing that process. And there's certainly got a following, and I can't tell you too much about all that. I know there's a group of people that still follow Walter Russell, and I'm not exactly sure what the organization is called, but there's a lot of people out there that know that there's that combination. Here's Don.
Hey, you made it, Don. Can you hear us? Hey, thank you, Michael. And hey, audience, do you ever hear dragons described as serpents or the serpent?
yeah, serpent.
Right.
Hey, I'm here now.
Hey, hey. In my mind, there's a distinction between dragon, and dragons are regarded quite differently in Asia than they are in where I'm from, Canada, and the Catholic world, right? Here in
But
Asia,
there's just also this
symbol
thing
of
where
freedom.
people would carry a serpent in their pocket for luck, for good luck. It's like a concept. Snake in your pocket or serpent in your pocket for good luck.
Interesting.
Used to be, and if a snake showed up in your house, it used to be a blessing from the gods before it got twisted.
Yeah, before it got demonized. There's a really famous book called The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. And when someone, like an enemy general, is captured and then released, let go to go back to reunite with his family or to choose for himself which king or ruler he wanted to serve, as opposed to being a captured strategist or general. He was described as, "What have you done? It's like you've released a tiger into the mountains or a dragon into the ocean." Basically, right? You never see them again or never be able to capture them again. They've been totally freed. All right, Don.
Well, I can see totally.
Welcome back to episode 3 of. Go ahead, Adam. Go for it.
Oh, I was saying I can see totally how the snake would be kind of seen as like a variant of the dragon and whatnot. That's pretty cool. I think dragons are pretty awesome. Symbolically, it's a fire because I'm a fire spirit, so I really associate with that fire nature. And I think the scorpion too is kind of synonymous with a dragon as well. They're kind of feel like they're kind of dragon-like. I guess you can't really see that, but kind of similar. But the fiery nature is kind of like a passion and a active force, you know. So they can have very good symbolic representation and meaning, or some could look at it in a bad context. But I think most symbols have kind of a both a good context and a negative context or whatnot, a destructive context and a productive context.
Yeah, you can use almost any tool for various purposes.
Yeah, like like even the goat, whatever, if they, where they kind of look at it like an image of the devil. It's almost like you could say the primal energy that we use in like that survival drive is just one layer of our nature that we use in this realm. It can be used in a bad way, you know. But also we have those lower natures for a reason, that if they're used properly and not used to, harm people without the right to do so and whatnot, then, those primal energies have a purpose. Like when you're angry and whatnot, and it can be used as motivation. Anger can be motivational, just like anger can be destructive. So kind of the archetype, I guess, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And it wouldn't make sense for us to cut off our arm or our leg, right? If we, got our hands dirty, so to speak. And these natures and these abilities or parts of us are extremely valuable. And maybe that's part of the responsibility of being human being, is making the best use of all the elements that we enjoy as we live our lives. That's a good point, Adam.
I talk about it a lot in my love for heavy metal music. Like that very heavy, aggressive nature to the music is not, a bad thing. And it has like it's usually kind of got like dark imagery behind it. But if you understand right from wrong as a person, you can listen to that and you're not influenced in any bad way. You can be motivated by that stuff and can be very motivational. I guess if you work out, or if you're just, like me, working at my desk writing an article, I like to listen to heavy metal. It's motivational. Right? So that's one example, I guess, of that lower primal energy used for a good purpose.
It makes me think too about in relationships, how you relate to that person, that partner. It's not usually, in my experience, all sweetness and light. Sometimes there's anger. Sometimes there's like angry sex, makeup sex, this kind of stuff. Go ahead. Discuss.
Some people might say that conflicts have their own kind of value too, because it points out where the rough edges of your personality or their personality are, or even just like your worldview, like maybe you're not looking at something right, and that's going to come up as your partner seeing something like a flaw in you or something, and you'll be like, if you look underneath the hurtful parts of the conflict, you might see that like some room for improvement or something.
The older I get, the more conservative I feel. Yeah. Although being divorced now, I feel I like a release of that, because like before I was married, I was told a story by my wife, or the mother of my children. And she said that just before she met me, she walked in on her boyfriend at the time having in bed with another woman. And she said that was the most horrible day of my life, and you will never be allowed. You cannot ever do that to me. I'm like, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to you. And so because of this story that she told me and our conversation about it, whenever someone said something to me like, oh, what about her? What's she doing now? She's still in Canada. You're in Taiwan. What's going on there? And I'm like, oh, no, there's nothing going on. She's not in another relationship with someone. That's just, she's not like that. I know she's not like that. But we never really, do we ever really know? You know, we never really know until it happens, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's probably some variation of that kind of hits on, well, at least almost everyone at some point or something, you know, maybe not like what happened with her, but just kind of someone being unfaithful and just kind of going screwing around or talking to other people. I've been alone for quite a while. I had like a brief relationship with somebody out in Oregon, but it was long term. I went out to see her a few times, but I'm cool. Just, I don't know. I mean, there's one girl that I'm interested to find someone, but I'm kind of, I won't just, you know, settle for anybody. I just don't think that's fair. I think there has to be that spark. Otherwise it's not worth it. Like, it has to be like that considerable, that thing where you just know, like, okay, this is the person that I you know, you have that spark with or whatever. Not just like, oh, well, there's no one else around, so I'll just, you know, be with this person. I don't think that's really that fair. I don't know. It's just kind of like, yeah.
A wise person once told me that when it comes to romantic or sexual relationships, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Like, you should be like very excited about it from the beginning, and if not, then it's probably not going to get any more exciting later.
Yeah.
Well, come on. She could be like a beautiful woman. Then you find out she's also a lesbian. And then she's also interested in you. And then she's also like, hey, why don't we go down to the bar and find us someone else?
You've been watching My Life, Lee? Just
well, that was like, that was offered to me by someone I was seeing before I got married. And I never took her up on the offer. And she described to me, she said, yeah, when I was at university, you know, I was seeing women and we could do that sometime. I thought, I don't know. And just, it never came about. Yeah. I was involved with a Filipina. We were not married. We were like living together. We were doing like ketamine, smoking weed and ecstasy. And she's like, oh, my friend Irene wants to come over. I'm like, okay, also a Filipina. And then, you know, the night wore on and she's like, oh, Irene's going to stay here tonight, overnight. I'm like, okay. So all of us went to bed, kind of thing. And I was just like, this is a test. I know this is a fucking test. There's something going on here. And she's like, because I couldn't let go of that feeling and I couldn't relax. And it just seemed so weird. And I did not enjoy that. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. It was just so, ugh. I was caught in this trap. And her friend was known for being very friendly and not very traditional. And yeah, like that. Anyone else have some things to say?
Why isn't the guest of honor commenting on this? It's his preview.
I was waiting to see what you guys had to say. I got some notes here ready to go if y'all want to listen to me jabber on for a while about some things.
It's good. Dip into them. Dip in, dip out.
Okay. So a concept. Can you know what? Can I do screen share? I don't know if that is a special privilege that I have here.
Host, would you please enable screen share for our
Yeah,
wonderful
it looks like I
guest,
can
Clarke?
actually. Looks like I can actually. I just want to show this chart here. Can you guys see this picture?
A picture.
It looks like a rainbow.
Oh, you're sharing the screen now?
Yeah, did it come up yet?
It
Oh,
is
there it
now
goes.
up.
Okay, there it goes. I guess it takes a while. Yeah, so this is a concept called the 7 Essene mirrors, or like 7 mirrors of self, basically. And it has to do with different ways in which other people, or what some might say what you see as other people, are reflecting back to you ways that you are in the world, or ways that, or like maybe like hidden parts of yourself, right? So I just wanted to show you guys this chart, and I don't want to leave it on there the whole time, but we'll come back to it when we get closer to the subject. Just wanted you to see kind of how the layout of how there's different mirrors, and they all sort of apply to different things. And I'll come back to that later. I don't know if I can turn off the screen share. Hold on. Oh, there we go. I got it now. Okay, you guys can see me now?
I can see it.
Okay, cool. So the concept of the 7 Essene mirrors, they're talking about a mirror, using that basically as a concept of a way the universe shows us like what we have become in the world, and therefore what you've become is what you're creating. And so it's like your own energy bouncing back in a way, kind of like how a bat uses echolocation to find out where it is. As human beings, we can use the mirrors, or other people say, or situations that come up as a way of showing us like what we're putting out that we may not be conscious of. So these reflections from the universe, some might call them lessons. It's all the same thing. It's a way of information coming back at you that you've been sending out. And so they tend to come in the form of more subtle to less subtle. So at first it might come, you might see it come like as an idea, right? And then if idea pops up in your head and it seems like, oh, this is something I should examine, and then you don't, then you just push that away, right? That lesson's going to have to come back slightly more subtle. So now it might be an idea that you hear from a person that comes up. And if that doesn't do it for you, then maybe it'll be like a situation in which you have to use that idea to get through the situation. And if that doesn't work, then it might come as like an actual relationship conflict or something, you know. Things will become more and more concretized and material as the lesson tries to show itself to you more and more. So as people, right, on Earth, we're creating physical actions. We're taking physical actions in the universe for non-physical reasons. So we're doing physical things. We're really trying to affect is like the world of meaning, or the world of causes, or the world of interpersonal relationships. But we're doing so by manipulating physical things, usually, like say even just the air and talking or something, right? And when the universe tries to communicate to you, it generally does through subtle manipulating the subtle realms in ways that will affect the physical realm so you can see them. So it's sort of the two opposite sides of how the matrix between yourself and the universe works. As far as like, yeah, so you'd start from the bottom of the tree of life maybe and work upwards, whereas when the universe or God or whatever is speaking to you, higher self, maybe it will be speaking from the upper realms down to the lower realms. So what the mirrors are basically kind of showing you is it's kind of like this, like if someone's like part of your higher self, or you might say a judging God or something, right, is watching you all the time with a little notebook in the hand, and then is watching you like, oh no, and see you do something else wrong, oh dear, and just writing down this long list, right? And eventually when it comes time, they take the whole book, right, and they just hit you with it. So the idea is the less lessons that you have to learn in life, the lighter the book is that you're going to get smacked with at some point or another. Eventually, life will throw the book at you. And you want to have it be like a pamphlet and not like the entire Bible, if you can avoid it. So that's kind of the part of the reason why you would pay attention to these mirrors when you see them pop up in life, because it's like maybe trying to make things easier for you, more or less. It's like the universe's early warning system, like, hey, crash is imminent if you continue on this path, sort of thing. So if I go back to my screen share picture, the first mirror is a mirror of like, this is basically the level at which the way you are presenting right now, like your outer layer personality, and the way it's interacting with the world, and the way you are in the current like now time frame, right? And so it's like what you accept, you will become. So what you find acceptable as you, so the more outer level actions that other people can see, you basically have to find those actions acceptable, or you're not doing them unless you're in some very unconscious or emotionally pushed state, you know. So this, like, these are the things that you, so when you see another person perform a certain kind of action, right, and you use the kind of excuse for them, like say, oh, you know, my mother did beat me, but you know, she had this pressure and this social pressure and whatever, and so that makes it okay, right? If you accept those things, then you end up becoming those same things as well, and so you're going to see more of that reflected back at you. So the first mirror is a way of what it is that you're actually physically doing in the world, and what you're putting out is one of the things that you're going to see coming back at you. And that's the thing that you'll see more of. The second level, I like to call this level the mean mug. This is basically like the things that you oppose, right? The things that you judge, that you don't like, or that you basically have bound yourself to. So what you oppose in life, you're binding to yourself, and you're going to see more of that thing, because you're a part of you's looking for it essentially too, and the way you look determines what you see. And so if you're a person who, say if you're a person who is always looking for some sort of a racial microaggression, right, you'll tend to see a lot of those things, whereas other people who are not looking for them won't, because this is something that you heavily judge. And so when it appears out there in the world, it pops up to you. And so that's how the second layer of mirrors can determine basically what it is that you're seeing, is because you have like a bias against it, basically, or it's some kind of a judgment, and life doesn't like your judgments, really. The universe really doesn't care too much for your judgments. And so the more of them, but negative emotion judgments, right? Judgments are fine. Like if you see another person and the guy's about to drive into a wall and you say, hey dude, you're about to judge into a wall, you know, like that's cool. But this is talking about judgment and using it in the context of a negative emotional judgment, like, oh, I don't like that thing, you know. If you don't, the more you do that, the more you're going to see more of that thing. And people always say things like, why does this keep happening to me? Or why do I keep seeing the same, you know, behavior everywhere from different people? It's because that's something you basically are looking for, because the universe ultimately is trying to show you how to not judge that thing. How that sort of, you know, and even more so maybe how you might find that thing inside of yourself. Because anything you're seeing on the outside, you're also going to see on the inside. So if you have negative emotional judgments against things that you see on the outside world, you're also negatively emotionally judging yourself. And so that's going to be a lack of self-love in certain areas, or a lack of self-acceptance in certain areas. And that's not going to, you know, bode well for the rest of your existence or personal relationships or something like that. Essentially, it's like whatever buttons you have, people are going to find a way to push those buttons. And the only way you can stop people from pushing the buttons is to not have those buttons in the first place. You know, if you got certain triggers, you're always going to find things to push those triggers. And so the second level can help you to see how to remove those mirrors, basically by putting them in front of you until you've seen enough of it. On the third mirror is basically parts of yourself that you've lost or like forgotten about over time. Some of this is running into the issue of the Jungian shadow, you know, about how that's parts of yourself that you've disowned because you said like, well, I'm not going to be like that, or cool, good people don't act this way, even though you have those urges inside. And so those parts will be appearing to you more and more, because the universe ultimately wants you to be whole, because the universe ultimately is a part of you, and so it's a holistic circle. And ultimately, any of those parts that you've sent away from yourself certainly going to have to be reintegrated in order for you to really be a holistic unit or a whole person. And sometimes too, you can lose a part, and it's like, say in a traumatic, like an emotional trauma, right? You had some traumatic events in your childhood. You may end up losing some abilities. Like if you're super exuberant, you know, and you're running around your house, you're all super happy, and your mom always turns to you and is like, why are you so happy all the time? You know, like people do that. Eventually you're going to learn to just stop acting that way all the time, right? And you don't want to go around the rest of your life that way. So life is going to keep trying to pop that up to you, exuberantly happy people. And when you see a kid acting that way, you're going to react the same way that your mom did, of like, oh my God, this freaking kid, why is he doing this? Running around yelling and stuff. He's so happy. It's going to get on your nerves because that's a part of you that you deny. And so that's almost kind of running into the realm of the second thing as far as the judgments, right? Negative judgments, that these are like internal pieces that you've lost. Actually, in some extent, all of these mirrors are kind of like lost or forgotten parts of you to some extent or another. And so because of that, you're going to see more of that kind of thing that you have sent away from yourself, because it's ultimately seeking reintegration, just like everything else is. The third mirror is essentially what's needed to recomplete you. And so that'll kind of just try to find its way back into your life. The fourth mirror, I like to call this one like but I wanted to say, because this is the area of incomplete relationships. To kind of like, there's an idea that when you have a song in your head, your brain is trying to complete that cycle. Like your brain sees that song as like a whole cycle. And so people say that if you can actually complete the whole song in your head, it might go away. But if you just keep hearing snippets of it and sending it away, that song is going to keep popping up, because your brain likes things to be closed and finished and not left in halfway process. So if you have a relationship with another person where it's like, especially if you walk away from a conversation and you're like, oh, I should have said this, and I should have said this thing and this other thing, you're going to keep seeing opportunities that are like that pop up all over the place, because there's an unfinished process that's trying to be completed here. Not just in in mentally, for sure, your brain wants to complete that process, but also on a spiritual or emotional level, it's an incomplete emotional process, because all your relationships, all of your emotional, like non-business relationships, are existing for a reason. That's a process that you need to go through, or it's some kind of a thing that you need to connect with, because it'll help complete you in some way or another. And so when those relationships get blocked, or the person moves away, or they stop talking to you, or you have a fight and you don't talk anymore, or something like that, the relationship doesn't go away. The emotional need that created the relationship doesn't go away. And then the part of you that relationship was there to fulfill doesn't get fulfilled. So all of that is still kind of left out there. And the universe ultimately, like, loving you, doesn't want you to go without. And so it will just keep trying to send those parts back at you again to complete the circle. Well, let's see, what else did I write down here? Yeah, so it could be something unlearned, some unclosed situation, some kind of undigested material even. Maybe you read something and you didn't quite grasp it, but you know it's important, so that's going to keep popping up in your head, and you're going to see that in life repeated to you. Like, you'll see that come up in various different places too. Yeah, unincorporated parts of self.
Wow, Don. So I've utilized a lot of mental energy in my life listening to song lyrics over and over and again. And what we said earlier, what Adam said earlier about that spark, needing a spark for getting involved with someone. I was thinking about how, as a young man, younger than I am today, I would program myself intentionally with love songs or relationship songs or songs about other people. But today I wouldn't do that. Instead, I would just let things unfold on their own. I don't need to. I do not choose to create these kind of frames or ways of thinking about this person or relationship. I would rather just enjoy who they are.
So you're saying you would do that in order to help along the falling in love process?
Yeah, when I was a younger man, I was very wrapped up in that and enjoyed picturing that, or it's the fantasy, I guess, of the relationship, you know, the idea of that relationship. And I used to describe this to friends that later on, after that had happened, as that was what the most painful part of that loss of a relationship was losing the idea of that relationship, what I thought it was, what I thought it could be, the potential that relationship seemed to have. Not so much that person, because that person, well, most of those people did not die, but so, you know, they were still out there in the world somewhere.
Yeah, so often it seems like relationships begin with like this giant, vast scope of all the beautiful things it could be, and then everything you find out about the other person kind of chinks away at some of that sometimes, you know, if it's not the right one, until eventually it's just like, oh, well, here's how it really is, and maybe that's not as good as what I imagined it could be. A lot of things are like that too. Like if you start a book, you know, and you think this is going to be so magical, wonderful, but then by the time you get halfway through the book, it's like concretized down as to what it could actually be about, or who's going to be in it, or what events are going to be in it. And maybe it's a little bit less exciting, even if it's a fantastic book, than like the wild imaginings you were thinking could be in it when you started.
Yeah, I guess now, so let's say I met someone, I wouldn't need songs to feel that this person is wonderful. I'd be more inclined to them show or reveal their wonderfulness on their own, at their own speed, their own time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a lot of personal growth on your part over the time since you've done that, you know.
Yeah, I earned that. Okay. Anyone else want to? You can talk about anything you like, or related to these mirrors, if you'd like, fellow guests.
There's a lot that I could identify with the completing the circle thing, I guess. When I guess when I look back at all my relationships, they did kind of end off at a not a great note, and I did feel this like nagging in my head. I couldn't really explain what it was, but it was like that. I guess when I think about it, that's what it felt like. Something where you start something and you want to finish it and you can't, and then you're just kind of left with this nagging feeling, I guess. And makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know, it didn't before, and I'm just kind of like, why does this bother me so much, you know?
Yeah, one of the things that's cool about being a person is you have inside of your head a copy, a very incomplete and sometimes inaccurate, but a copy of every other person that you know or care about. And so you can actually have conversations with the other, say if you're out of the relationship with a certain woman or whatever, you can have conversations with that woman inside your head to try to complete the system, what that relationship was going for. And if you manage to actually realize what that was trying to get you to see, what that relationship was about essentially, or for in your life, then you might be able to get that sense of closure even without the other person physically being there.
That's an interesting concept. A lot to think about. That's kind of cool.
How did you come by that information, Don?
Observation, I guess. I don't know if I read that somewhere or something, but I noticed that's what I do.
Sorry to interrupt you, Adam.
No, it makes a lot of sense to me. I didn't think about it much before, I don't know, but kind of makes sense. That whole, and then the thing about the hearing the songs, you have to hearing it all the way through, or you're going to get that. Yeah, that makes sense too. Interesting stuff.
Oh, thanks. So let me see, I'm going on to so we're talking about the fourth mirror and how it's about the unclosed relationships. Right, so as we lose parts of our lives and ourselves, we tend to we can see the man behind the curtain, if you will, or the thing that's, when you're doing meditation, you know, eventually you still your mind to a point where you can see, you know, the true self behind all the thoughts and the feelings and stuff, right? And so in a way, that's what the the relation, a completed relationship, you know, in a way that's kind of what it's leading to eventually, is like these events had to play out in order to reach this conclusion or to become this thing. And once you've become that thing, it's like that relationship doesn't need to carry on in the same way it does. Not like, oh, you're going to break up with your wife or something, but it can be a different relationship now than it was before. Like maybe you'll be a different person, and so therefore the relationship has to be different. Let me see, this fifth mirror over here, right? This is about, this is very similar to the fourth one, actually. These are like parental imprints, or imprints from, they say, most people do say parents, right? But I would even say, you know, from going on Hillary Clinton's like, it takes a village thing. And I've never quoted Hillary Clinton before, I don't think, in my life. But, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. And so it's not just your parents, it's like the whole society, it's the peers of the child, it's like the other adults that are around, right? There's imprints that those people put on you that then will become the way that you act. And there's no way to avoid that. That's just how it, there's nothing wrong with that either. That's like how it should be. Because as a kid, you can't sit there and explain to the kid like, all right, here's how heat works. And here's why you shouldn't touch a stove, because like there's gonna be some kind of electrons coming out of that thing and they're gonna go in your hand, they're gonna bounce off the atoms. Like you just have to.
So I have two things to say really quickly. First of all, the quote, not Hillary Clinton, it's an African proverb. You're totally off the hook. So,
I think it's her book title, but yeah, I think.
Well, yeah, but it's an African proverb from like.
Yeah, I'll go with that from now on. You're right. I did not quote Hillary Clinton. I'm taking that off my soul.
Second of all, when I was a child, that's exactly what my parents did. They were like, okay, heat works like that. It speeds up the movement inside the cells. So if you get you're
really?
That's how you get burned. Everything was scientific.
Even at a very young age, like 2 or 1 or something?
I moved in with my parents when I was 4.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I would plan to do the same thing with my daughter, and I'll explain it, and you get what you get out of it. And if you need to, I'll explain it again later.
But it also led to situations where I would say to other children in the playground, excuse me, young boy, you should really not sit on the stone during the rain, because you know your kidneys are located like really low in your back, and if you get cold in the kidneys, you can get a bacterial infection. It's really not good.
And how do the other kids react to that?
What?
How do the other kids react to that?
They just thought I was weird.
Oh, well.
They did not believe me.
That's even the funny part. A lot of times when you explain something fully, people really don't believe you.
Well, but I was a kid, right?
Yeah. That's the other thing too. It's like you're a kid and they're like, oh, what could you possibly know? You're just a kid.
But then I also grew up by myself, so I didn't know any other kids until I was like 4. So, and I was like reading the encyclopedia and stuff like that. So I was weird. Like I was talking adult language and stuff. I didn't speak kid.
Oh, wow.
So there were no other kids in my family, so.
Wow. Let me see here. So basically it's like, if you were raised in a certain environment where things are a certain way and it's never been questioned, you know, especially if you're a very young child, you don't generally question the way things are. It's just like, oh, I don't know, you know, certain time of day, we go to bed, we do this thing, you know. And so because of that, those are going to create imprints on your subconscious, because ultimately you'd want to re-examine those things as you grow older. You know, personally, I went through a time period myself where, so I had like in my upbringing, I didn't really like either of my parents. They were both abusive and I didn't really like. So it came to a point, once it was explained to me that like, this is how life works in a way, that like your parents imprint things on you or your society imprints things on you. Well, I didn't get along with the other kids in school. I didn't get along with the teachers. I didn't get along with my parents. So I didn't want any of their influences on me. So I went through a time period where I literally went through my brain. I was like, that's coming from somebody else. I'm going to go take that out. And I would go in, I don't know if I'd recommend doing that at as young an age I did, because you would have put a good thing in the hole. You don't want to just delete stuff out of your brain and just leave empty spaces. That's not the best. And so, but that's what I ended up doing. So this is a thing that like, this is a near and dear to my heart here, this fifth mirror, because I'm very aware of in my life of the different influences that come from like childhood or on the society, and that influences like how you behave and how you act in the world. kind of like a lot of this comes verbally for people too. Like, I had an ex who would just say, like, you'd tell a story and she'd be like, well, that's nothing. I got a what your story, you know? And she didn't mean it that way. That's just how you talk, where she comes from. So like, she didn't mean like, you'd be like, oh, this terrible thing happened in my childhood. Like, oh, that's fine. Don't worry about it. This happened, blah, blah, blah. And she didn't mean like that, but it's just how you talk.
I used to do that a little bit when I was like in my early 20s, and it was brought to my attention. But the reason I did that is because I thought it would make them feel better if I tell them that something similar happened to me too. Like they wouldn't feel so alone, and they would like think that I can relate to them and stuff. But it was interpreted by the people around me that I was trying to one up them.
Yeah.
And that's not really how I meant it. So, but the other thing I meant to say is that, so I didn't trust my parents because I didn't live with them. And then I moved in with them when I was 4, and I only met them like maybe several times, but not like, you know, I think we went for a vacation once when I was 3 for 2 weeks. That's the longest time I spent with my parents before I moved in with them. And they lied. Everybody lied. Everybody lied. All the adults lied. They were all fucking crazy, and they all fucking lied.
Wow.
And so what I did is I decided that I would collect storybooks with like ancient fables, because long time ago, people didn't lie and they knew how to live. And now people are weird and they lie. So you can't trust anything that comes from a modern society. So if you want to learn about life, you have to find the oldest fucking books, oldest fables, oldest legends, because the legends are supposed to bring the imprint of humanity. So I literally started like collecting storybooks at like 5 or 6 years old. And I would just like every Christmas or birthday, I'd be like, yeah, I want books, like old legends and things like that. And so everybody would buy me them. I still have several books.
You know, I think I went through a similar process, but I just wasn't conscious of it in that way. There was a lot of times when I was young that, like, 'cause in my family, it was considered fun to like see what you can convince a kid is true and then laugh at them when they believe it. And so it was like, oh, you know, if you fall asleep on the ground, bugs will crawl in your ear and eat your brain. So you can't do that. And then it was like, if you go swimming in the pool, you know, there'll be some sort of bacteria that's going to eat your feet off. So you have to ask us, and then we'll take the bacteria out, and then you can get in the pool. Like all sorts of things like that. And then on top of that was the whole Santa Claus thing. And then everyone is literally in on this giant plot. Like, I mean, that was a proper setup for being born into this world. So hey, good on them for that one. But the rest of the stuff, you know, the Easter Bunny and all this stuff, and then you know, once I stopped believing the religion thing too, I mean, that even made it worse. Because yeah, as a young kid, I always had this like, everyone is trying to trick me. Like they're all in on this secret somehow.
Santa Claus was way easier to believe in than the Catholic Church. Way easier, because they don't.
He's got physical proof. He actually comes to your house and drops off presents.
Well, so does the priest, but it's not the same kind of presents.
Oh no.
You know, the priest comes every Christmas and he brings the little colored picture of Mother Mary or whatever. And sometimes he had like Saint Agnieszka, so he would give me the one with my actual patron in it. And that was fun.
Oh,
and then
cool.
he would like sit at the table, and there was a whole ceremony we had to do and stuff. But I didn't believe them because they weren't making sense. Because in the book it says, love other people as much as you love yourself, or more than you love yourself, and love your brother as much as you love yourself, or no, love God more than you love yourself, and love your brother as much as you love yourself. And they never fucking did that. The priest didn't do it, and there were priests in my family, and so I saw them sitting around the table on Sunday afternoon, you know, bitching about people and other priests and the bishop this and the bishop that. Is just like, you guys don't even believe your own shit. Like, I was 7 years old and I was just like, what the fuck? And so then when I had to go to First Communion, I did this whole thing where I went to the prelate and I said, okay, I have some issues with this First Communion thing. You have to explain them to me, because otherwise I'm not doing this. And I said, you know, it's not right that a Muslim boy would go to hell just because he doesn't know any better. And the 10 Commandments super overpower the whole thing about gods. And if he's obeying his parents, then he's not doing anything wrong. And so that's not right. And and then this other thing, and then I'm like, and this whole prayer book thing. I mean, I can't relate to any of this. Do you even use these words? When is the last time you used these words in a sentence? That's not good. I need to speak with my own words with God. And so I had this whole thing, like we sat for an hour and discussed things, and I was satisfied with his answers, and I decided to go through with the first communion thing after that.
Wow.
But I went over the head of my parents, my actual priest that was teaching me, my uncle who was a priest, and I went directly to the boss of the local church where I was at.
Cool. Yeah, you got to go to the man who actually has the answers.
How what? Well, yeah, because everybody lies, right? So I figured if the boss guy would have less chance of lying because he got so high up already. I didn't understand.
Yeah, I had problems with all that kind of stuff when I was young. And then too, when I was, I think about 10 or so, I realized like these guys, they act like they're performing a charity. They act like their service is a charity service where they like give all this money and food to people or whatever, right? And then you walk in and you're like, is that solid gold? Do you have solid gold things in here and like marble statues? And like, how much was that painting? And like, come on, these guys are rich as hell.
But it's not even that. It was like, hey, let's go to Uncle house because the donations for the poor people came in, and we want to pick you out a good jacket before it opens up for the poor people.
Oh yeah, that too.
So like I would go into the room full of the donations from Germany or whatever. And yeah, my mom was a single mom, so we weren't rich or whatever. But I got to pick from the whole room before anybody else was there because my uncle was a priest. And he opened the door, you know what I mean? Like the day before or something. And that wasn't right either. And then my uncle had a whole cupboard of these German puddings that they sent. And I was thinking, well, weren't these puddings for the poor children? Why is there like 20 of them in your cupboard? Shouldn't you be eating like Polish puddings as a priest, not fancy German ones?
Oh man.
Yeah, I used to volunteer at a church, and like not like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and they'd always be sitting in the back, just like eating all the donated food and like munching on the cookies and all this stuff. And it's like there are hungry people literally right outside here.
Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah, so that that kind of unfairness and that kind of like intentionally, first off, being very fake about who you really are and how you operate, and then also the the intentionally trying to trick you and lying to you about things because they think it'll be easier for you to understand if we just explain it this way or something. We all experience that, and we all tend to end up seeing a lot more of that out in the world. That's our young childhood sets us up for those things. They end up seeing an awful lot of it everywhere. Like people, when I was a kid, they would like try to convince you of stupid things to see if you would believe it. And then I went to school and I was like, oh yeah, I know what this is about. They were trying to, in a way, it's like they're preparing you for the world, One of the issues, it is a common phrase in autonomy that like habit is the great engine of society and of your life, and that the habits that you take on will become, your destiny and your future. It's in the fifth mirror here that we see the habits coming back at us, this is where the habits come into place. Like when you're young and these things are all instilled in you, you're going to end up seeing more and more of that around until eventually you'll learn either whether this is examine it at least, where you'll take it into your consciousness and look at these habits and be like, should I do this or not? Why am I even doing this in the first place? We all have to go through a time period in our lives, usually around like the 20s or so, where you look over all the things you habitually do and are like, should I even really keep doing this, or why am I even doing this? So the sixth mirror, this is a really dark one. A lot of people write lots of stuff about this. It has been associated with this like new age phrase called the dark night of the soul, which is like like your lowest point, or like the point from which you can rebound, right? It's sort of like if a thing is falling, it has to hit something hard until it can begin to bounce back up again.
Rock bottom or something.
Yes, exactly. The rock bottom. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. So the dark night of the soul thing here is kind of like that rock bottom. And that is, in a way, that feeling is related to the sixth mirror, right? But in the sixth mirror, you'll see it more like these are the internal components of it for you. So like, it's kind of like, yeah, it's a sense of transcendence through loss, right? So it's like when you're taken down, you're stripped down to the point that you don't have much left. You know, the first thing, there's nowhere else to lose, and so that's the point where you can begin to develop courage to move forward. But also, it's like when you're stripped of your physical possessions, you know, it's just you then left. You know, I think it's a Carl Jung quote that's it's like you know, a lot of man's problems, or maybe all of man's problems, stem from his inability to sit quietly by himself in a room alone. And so sometimes life will force you into those situations where you have really nothing left to rely on but yourself. There's really nothing left but you. And so that's where you can see, you know, that's when you're left with just you, then you can see the bad parts of you that are still in there, the stuck energies, you know, like a lack of self-worth, or like abandonment issues is a huge one for all of our society. You know, a sense of cosmic abandonment kind of follows people in general, as far as where humanity is even left, you know, in this world. And a sense, the ultimate aloneness too, you know, a lot of this, the sixth mirror comes into play with a lot of the existentialist and the postmodernist kind of philosophies, where you just see the world in a very cynical way, and therefore the world presents itself to you rather cynically or dark, and how you feel like, oh, we're all ultimately alone and we don't have anyone, and that can tend to alienate people from you and then become like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because, you know, that's kind of how you look at the world. And so that's kind of how it's going to manifest itself to you. So it's like in any situation where you fear that you might not be enough, if long as you hold that aspect, you really might not be enough, you know. And when you feel like some effort is going to fail, it's very more likely that effort's going to fail, because that's going to be shown to you. So you'll see like, hey, this is the way you're looking at things, and this is what you're getting, you know. As you can see, like from the first mirror up to the seventh, these become to get more harder to explain and more ephemeral, subtle kind of things. Where when something happens, you know, as it goes up the chart, you know, it's in the, you know, 6, 7 range. These things are more like, oh, it could have many other explanations, and it's not necessarily that one thing, you know. When it comes to, like, say, the first mirror, it's like, well, you treat people badly and then they treat you badly. That's pretty obvious. You know, but when it comes to the sixth mirror, it's like, did that bad thing really happen to you because you believed it might happen to you, or did it happen to you because of whatever physical corollaries that occurred in the universe, you know? So the seventh one is even more harder to explain.
Wait. So
Yeah,
how does the sixth mirror show up in relationships?
Oh, good question. Let me see. Well, I mean, yes, if you have self-worth issues, right? If you have, you know, lack of self-love, for instance, it's going to be you're not going to get that love from others, or even when it is given, you may not see it. I think often if you feel like you're not being loved in life, it's probably that you are being loved, but you can't see where it is, you know, or it may not even be from people you know. It might even be like practically random strangers, like the guy who runs the counter at the convenience store or something, you know. It's difficult to escape any of these aspects of life, particularly love, as it's like a universal energy that exists in the absence of anything else. So it's kind of like the cosmic background noise of the universe. And so it's pretty difficult to try and escape from that. And so in a way, when you're having these issues, say like aloneness, right? No one's really ultimately alone, right? And because everyone else is kind of even like physically you might be, right, but you're 10 people will currently have you in their head, you know, like when they look at things in the world, they might be thinking, well, what would this guy think about this? Or, you know, he might say this about it, you know. And so there's that aspect. There's probably people in your life to whom you're very important, who would miss you if you were not there, you know. So like people feel alone a lot of times, and in some ways we all are, right? Some ways you're kind of ultimately alone, but really, like, the world is full of people, and mostly full of people who care about you. I said the trust issue too, like being unable to trust other people can of course have many sources, but sometimes it comes from like your own lack of trustworthiness because of a lack of like knowing like where like you don't have a concrete background, there's no rock for you to believe in. And so because of that, like you know, you're a bit wishy-washy with things, and you could say like, oh, maybe I'll, you know, this will be different, or I'll do this later, or maybe it won't happen that way or something, right? And so that's a way in which you'll see this kind of coming back to you in your relationships. Like, yeah, I mean, plus too, you know, if you don't have a lot of self-worth, you got abandonment issues, and you have, you know, sort of, there's a thing called thrownness, where you feel like you were just thrown into the universe and unprepared, and it's just a hellscape, and you know, you just have to find your way out of it or something, you know. When you're carrying those ideas, you're going to meet a lot of people who also have those ideas and bond with them too. There could be even like trauma bonding at this level. The sixth level could be some of that trauma bonding stuff, where another person has been through a terrible experience too, and so on some level you feel like you can really understand each other, and it can develop into like a codependent relationship, where it's sort of more about sharing your troubles or your pains with the person than it is about any kind of like growth or getting anything out of the relationship. I don't know if that answered your question that much. All right, cool. So in the seventh one, it says here, in you, I see how I am me, right? Now that's difficult to unpack right there, but basically, I think what they're trying to get at is, when you're seeing other people, it's like whatever's happening in them is something that's also happening in you as well, that was like a formative experience kind of in your life. So like how you judge is how you will be judged in a way too. So that the way people have a real sense for hypocrisy. So if they see you acting, you saying certain things and you act in a different way, they can't even help it sometimes. They're just going to point it out. Like, look, you're doing that, and you said you would do this, and like usually, luckily for us, like hypocrisy is often funny. So sometimes they can just make a joke out of it, you know. But people generally tend to have a pretty good sense of that, and they'll let you know when they say it, you know. Or it's kind of like you see through the colors that you paint on your own lens, and so if you can look at the world through some rose tinted glasses, or you can look at the world through some like sad blue glasses if you want, and ultimately that's what you're going to get out of it, you know, what it's going to be presenting to you. Or like the way you look determines what you see. So like if you're looking for something, you're going to see that thing, more or less of that thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah, or like yeah, if it's your wherever you cast light into the universe too, you're going to see a shadow go into the same place, which is created by the light and is of the same nature as the light. And so that's another way in which you'll see similar things coming back to you from the universe. That's roughly all I have for the actual 7 mirrors. But I just kind of wanted to make some general statements now that we've seen this, and we're kind of exposed to the idea of like, no one, like you're not expected to just like memorize all this or to have all this at once. It's just like some of these ideas will probably trigger things in you that you're going to notice throughout the following, you know, days or weeks, and you'll see like, oh, now I kind of understand a little bit better what's happening there. All of this kind of comes from this general concept of like the spirit in relationships, right? And how it is that spirit brings to us our relationships and what role spirit kind of plays, right? So for one thing, the spirit is like that word means wind or breath, right? And so one thing that the wind does, it's an uncontrollable cause, right? So the wind can just like randomly change at any point. It could be like fast or slow. It could be a cold wind coming up from nowhere, and no one can really control how the wind is going to be. Like try as you might, you're not going to build some kind of machine or some kind of a thing that changes the wind. And so that's in a sense that's a way in which spirit shows us that ultimately there is no completely controllable situation. There's no such thing as perfect order, and there will always be something that, you know, life finds a way. There'll always be something that comes through. You know, like we all saw Jurassic Park, And in that they try to make a perfect system in which hopefully they're thinking the dinosaurs won't breed because they're all female. But it turns out that if you do that, life is going to find a way, and even if it has to spontaneously turn some females into males so they can make babies, it's going to find a way, because that's just the nature of life, and it's how spirit is. It's like the uncontrollable cause that you can never completely rule out. So the relationships that you have in your life are a way of they would call it triggering complexity, right? It's like that's your way of bringing complexity, more uncontrollable situations into your life, where it's like the random element. Life is boring without that random element, but it also is where you might get like random valuable treasures. If you talk to random people on the street, eventually someone's going to tell you something really cool that you never knew. So there's always that aspect of randomness. The spirit also is the breath, right, which is the backbone of life. All of life is basically focused on its relationship with the air. Even the the planktons and stuff in the ocean are related to the cycle of the air and the wind and how spirit moves things across the world. It's the wind is ultimately the thing that moves. It breaks down all the harder parts, like rocks and things, and it moves those parts to different places where they're more needed or where they'll serve a different purpose. So it's kind of like the function of movement. So since the spirit is basically, like in Freemasonry, they would call the spirit the generative principle, or like the G in the middle of their little design they got there. And that's the place where things come from. It's like the spirit in which you do things is your spirit, and therefore that's what you generate in the world. And so part of the role of spirit in relationships is to assist in this moving of things forward, of like you can co-generate things together, because you have more people involved in the same thing, and because you're kind of going along the same path, and now you got a friend to go along with you. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at other people, there's people's spiritual nature for relationships, right? Like whether it be like a friendship or a romantic relationship or something, it's nice if you have like a similar spirit and there's some kind of likeness between your spirit and the other person. Like that can be a positive thing. It's not necessarily always positive. Combativeness, for sure. Like you don't want the other person to be a combative nature to yours spiritually. That's unlikely to derive a lot of benefits, but sometimes it can, particularly in a working relationship. If it's a person you don't work with them like all day and you kind of clash for some reason, sometimes good things can come from that clash, particularly because they're not a huge part of your life. You don't want that same kind of clash with like your romantic partner or something, or even your own children or anybody you live with. So where likeness is nice in spirit with a partner relationship, what's even better is a complementary or even a catalytic relationship with their spirit. So if there's something in them that kind of pushes you forward, maybe it's not the same as you, maybe it gets you, maybe like say our host Mr. Lee is like a very bright and sunny kind of person, and so some people don't have that in them, and that helps be a catalyst, right? So with my relationship with Lee, it's like, we're not the same kind of spirit, but the addition of his spirit in mine helps give me a boost to move forward. It's a catalytic relationship. And that's actually kind of more important than the other person being the same kind of person as you are. So one of the uses of spirit in relationships is to assist or support people in taking action in the world and in their personal growth. Based on our previous conversation, you might say, that it was expansion and liberation, right? So part of the role of spirit in the physical world, of like your relationship spiritually with other people in the physical world, is that you guys can move the world together, that you can like be heading in the same direction and sort of help each other, assistance with the growth. You can help your attempts to liberate or expand the world outside, like to help bring the world closer to freedom, or to expand the way the world thinks about certain subjects, right? And it can do the same thing for you internally. So if you have a stronger spiritual relationship with another person, they can help you in your own personal liberation, especially because another person around makes it much easier to do things. Like if they can help you to be more vulnerable. Sometimes I feel like I can feel my feelings more when another person's in the room than I can when I'm alone. And maybe that's just me, but that's something I've noticed personally. So they can help you with, your internal growth, and your internal liberation as well, as far as like, when you're really connected to another person, it's like there's more things that are allowable in that relationship. It's like many relationships have a lot of subjects you don't want to touch, and you can't talk about these things, you don't want to go in those areas. But when you have a stronger connection to a person, even if you don't agree on things, it's still safer to talk about them. And that can be that can be a real boon to your personal growth or to theirs.
I would like to ask you about this diagram. Is it always organized in this way?
As I've
Have you ever
seen,
it
yeah,
in reverse
this
order?
is a relatively modern one. In fact, the whole concept of the Essene mirrors may not actually come from ancient times, from what I've seen. It's kind of like it's related to the Essenes as a topic is related somewhat to the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there's various organizations who want people to believe that things are different than they were, especially when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls and like John Allegro's work and things like that. So the Essenes are tied up in that. And I mean, I find these are valid and useful concepts. And so I tend to use them in my own mind when I'm talking with other people. I don't necessarily say that I could say like, oh, this is definitely some ancient thing that people used to talk about, before Christ or something. So they are generally in this order. They may not be described in the same way, but like you're not going to see them switched in order very much, as far as I've seen. Does anyone else have any comments or maybe talk about a relationship you were in?
Have you ever heard of Dolores Cannon?
No.
She's like a hypnotherapist who does past life, well, she's dead now, but she did past life regression. She was one of the longest working hypnotherapists in the history of humanity. She started in the 60s when hypnotherapy was just like in its infancy. And then she like went deeper and deeper and deeper. And at the beginning, because she was a woman, there was some issues, but then, as the world got older, it didn't matter anymore. In any case, she wrote a whole bunch of books, and she has 1,000 videos on YouTubes and stuff like that about past life regression. So what she would do is she would regress somebody to the point of a past life and then ask about like the situation, what they were eating, how they were dressed, everything like that. So basically like firsthand historical accounts kind of thing. And so she then organized them in topic, like by subject. And then she put out books, like there's a series of books about Jesus, like people who lived in the time of Jesus and what they ate and how they dressed and, what their issues were. And, even one person is like, oh, did you know Jesus? Oh yeah, he's that guy down the road, son. I've heard of him. He went away to England right now, but he'll be back, or something like weird conversations like that. So I find her books very interesting. Like, I don't know how factual they actually are, because who knows, right? It's a like she wouldn't even know, because it's a hypnosis, right? The person is just saying, but it's all recorded and you can hear the recording and a lot of the things. And in some of them, she just tells stories about. But then there was this series, Conversations with Nostradamus, that I never really got into. I was more into like the historical, like the lessons. There was one book that talked about stuff we forgot. So like people used to know this stuff and then they forgot. And there was this one character that made a huge impression on me, this old man. And Dolores Cannon is talking to the old man, and she's like, why are you so tired? You keep saying you're tired. He's like, well, I keep teaching these people these techniques. I mean, it's not difficult, but they just don't get it. I go away for 10 years, I come back and everybody's forgotten what I taught them. This is ridiculous. And so he kept going to the village and teaching healing techniques and stuff. And then he would go away to teach elsewhere. When he come back, they'd all forgotten.
Wow.
No matter how many times. He's like, I'm old now. I'm 90 years old. I've been back so many times to this village trying to teach them. And I think at the end they stone him or something, which is interesting too. But
So that was Dolores Cannon, like Cannon?
Yeah, and Dolores, D-O.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna look that up. Do you know if anyone has done any work to like verify any of those stories? Because I've seen a lot of cases where people have done past life regression on, like, say, a child, and then they'll go back to, like, in the house is exactly the same layout they described, and the fence is the same and everything.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it's quite an industry. Like her daughter is continuing her work. There are like, it's called QHHT, her method of hypnosis that goes into like past life regressions, and you can get one pretty much in any city. There are a lot of followers that do this type of hypnosis. It was just that she was the first one who tried it, right? Because nobody thought about asking questions about other than this life, you know? So, I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen hypnotherapists go all the way to the time when somebody's a baby and, you know, describe a situation and then find out why the allergy happened or something. But this is whole other level. It's interesting. I find her quite fascinating.
Yeah, I'll check that out. That looks pretty interesting. I've always been very skeptical about the past life stuff, but I'm also always willing to look into it and see, because there are cases where, like I said, there's cases where they can verify, and then that leads to a lot of questions from that.
Well, and there was also the thing where I remembered part of my past life, and then I went into hypnosis with a dude, and then I remembered another part of the same past life. So that was weird because it like was seemingly unrelated. And at first I didn't even know it was the same life. But then he said, because it was something like, I was like, I'm so cold. I'm so cold. Why are you so cold? Oh, because they're chasing me. And I was like, wait a minute. I know this story.
Oh,
You know?
wow.
So it was interesting because they're chasing me and I'm hiding in the cave.
Hopefully that doesn't happen at any point in your current life. That sounds like you've made some improvements.
We'll see. I promised myself I wouldn't end up in jail this time. You know. I don't know. There seemed to be a series of lives where I died in jail for whatever reasons. None of them criminal, which is funny. Anyway, I can tell you stories.
All right. Do any of you have any closing comments before we wrap up our podcast episode 3 today of Love and Support Sessions? Anyone?
I had a lot to think about that I heard, that I enjoyed to listen to Don's presentation there. I appreciate that. That's it for
Cool,
me.
thank you.
Well, I was going to, in regard to some of the things in regard to, some like I think it was the 6th or the 5th, talk about your mother and father and kind of how they imprint on you. I think in a lot of cases, and certainly some of the books that I've read, that you kind of find relationships that are very similar to the ones that you've encountered when you were a child. And to some degree, you're revisiting those to like resolve them in some way, right? And so like I definitely feel like I've encountered this in my own adult relationships where I'm encountering the same problems over and over again. And because I'm not reflecting on those things, I'm repeating those things. And certainly I think, in just the past few years, I've definitely learned to give other people choices. And, I think, Lee, you mentioned like creating the circumstance where you can discover who those people are in a way that you can see the beauty in them. I think one of the ways to really do that is to give them choices where, they have different, like by giving them choices, you can kind of give them the opportunity to demonstrate what they're after. And, I think that's really kind of one of the things about human nature that I think is really something we need to learn, is by creating the circumstance where, instead of us trying to be something for the other person that we may not be, which is something that I felt I had to do for much of my life, and try and, like put on whatever the, create whatever the circumstance where I'm like what they need me to be. When I just started giving them the opportunity to make their own choices, it became a great deal easier for me to see what was beautiful in them, and maybe help myself figure out what are the issues that I need to deal with. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, actually. That's one way in which you can see that these mirrors are deceptively simple concepts. Like, because these 7 mirrors constitute a large number of the ways in which reality manifests itself, in which destiny occurs, you might even say. Like, this is why things happen, basically. And so that's one of the things you can see there. So for instance, like you were talking about how the parents, imprint on you as a child, and then you tend to seek those kind of relationships because it's like a groove was born in your soul, and now it's just things just slip into that groove. Like that's a comfortable place to sit, basically. And what you'll see is that people over time have abused their children because saying maybe that's the way it's seen in society, or maybe it's just easier, or maybe their life is just super hard and they don't have a lot of space left or something, right? So they treat the children in abusive ways, which then allows the government to treat them in the exact same way, because the government is essentially an extended mommy and daddy. Like say the Democrats are like the mommy and the Republicans are like the daddy. And so these are basically the same 2 gods, just extrapolated out into the society. And so the people tend to look for the same kinds of government that they had in their home situation. There's a really cool book by Wilhelm Reich, The Mass Psychology of Fascism, where he wrote about how this is like right in the 30s, before the Nazi Empire was being built, and he saw it coming into place, and he said, I see what he was. This is a student of Sigmund Freud. So Freud and Jung and Reich were all talking about this, along with a bunch of other people. And he said, I can see where this is going. Like, I can see clearly, like the way one of the things they would do in Germany at the time was you would swaddle the child, and then you would put him on a hook up in the corner. And then they would just let them sit there, and it's like, because they're so well wrapped up, if they can poop themselves or whatever, and you might leave them there like the whole day and come take them down later at the end of the night because you got stuff to do and whatever. So the children would, like, bugs might come crawling up the wood, and then the smell of the poop or whatever in the baby's diaper would be like crawling all over the baby. And so you'll see in a lot of Hitler's speeches, he'll be talking about how the Jews are like lice, or how they're like some kind of a vermin or something, right? Because he's hearkening back to the imprints from the childhood and using those as a way to like turn you against people in the future, right? Or like maybe if people live if you live the kind of life when you're a kid where everybody gets a prize and there are no losers, and your parents are like don't hold you to any super like particular standards because they just want to be your friend, and they want you to feel accepted and not to ever think that say if you get any math problem wrong or something, right? Then you're going to want the government to treat you the same way when you grow up. You want to be like given money just for showing up in the world or something, right? You might get some universal basic income going on because that's kind of how things were in the household. And so a lot of times what we see in the world comes from this, like, the younger imprints.
Wild. All right. That was great. Anyone else? I'm about to close it out. All right. I would like to thank my wonderful guest for the second time around, Don Clarke. And Don, did you finish all your notes? Do you have more notes?
Yeah, I finished them all this time.
Wild. But of course, you would always be welcome for our next episode. It's totally up to you. And Agnieszka, do you want to mention your upcoming podcast in the schedule of our lives? I think yours is the next one on Tuesdays.
Mine's tomorrow at 7:30 Central, so that's 8:30 Eastern. And I don't know, what are we talking about tomorrow, Lee?
spiritual evolution. I think tonight I suggest maybe we could talk about spiritual self-defense. I would like to understand some of what you've mentioned to me in other conversations about how we can protect ourselves from
You
spiritual
mean like
attack.
through spells or through NLP or energy work or just like linguistics? There's both. I guess we can talk about it all.
I didn't even know there was these distinctions, so I'm happy to learn. Yeah.
All right. Maybe Don will join us.
Yeah, maybe I will.
And I'd like to
Are
thank
you in the
Mike
East Coast?
and Adam.
I'll be there too.
That'd be cool.
All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right. This was our episode 3 of Love and Support Sessions from Taipei and Acapulco and Philadelphia and Massachusetts, Adam?
Yep.
In Massachusetts?
Yep.
Right on. Thank you all so much for coming by and adding to the discussion. Wouldn't have been the same without you. And I'll say it once again to all of you human beings, creatures out there, maybe feeling a little bit lost. Come home. Come back to your human family. Drop. No need to feel trapped or held or bound by aberrant behavior or things you've suffered or gone through. You can come home. Come home to your human family. Come home to us. Get back to what you'd really like to be doing and how you would really like to relate to your fellow human beings, because we need you. Good night.
Good night.
I really like that line you say. The wayfinder. Hello?
No, I
Guess
just
that means
wanted-
it's time